Welcome to Melt. I'm Suresh Venkat. This week, we're exploring the jewelry industry with Tata-owned jewelry brand Tanishq. The company is aiming for double-digit growth in FY24 with plans to increase omnichannel revenue and store count both in India and abroad. And what role does marketing play in driving that growth? We're in conversation with Ranjani Krishnaswamy, General Manager Marketing at Tanishq, for the answers. Why does jewelry need a purposeful, contentious, and nuanced storytelling approach for its marketing communications? Let's find out as we get ready to melt with Ranjani Krishnaswamy. So, Ranjani, let's start with a macro question. Human beings don't need jewelry. It's not a fundamental need in any sense of the term, right? Why does Tanishq exist at all?
So I think my response to it would be quite contrary. I think humans do need a lot of things that feed the soul, a lot of things that fuel aspiration, a lot of things that make them identify with who they are, a lot of things that build a certain relevance to their lives. And why I say that in the jewelry context is because jewelry is actually quite multifaceted in a way. At one end of the spectrum, it is a source of expression, and therefore it fuels the aspiration of the woman who wants to be seen in a certain way, who wants to speak to herself in a certain way. Equally important, it's also a social marker. Wearing a piece of jewelry helps you identify with the community, with the kind of people that you belong to. So it gives you a sense of belonging as well. And it has a lot of symbolism by virtue of culture, where people draw a lot of relevance in their life when they wear jewelry. No wedding is complete without jewelry, and wedding is such a marker in life. It is the most penetrated category. Even my house help wears a piece of jewelry, and typically in southern India, it is pure jewelry. It's pure gold. So I think in some ways, while we've all sort of graduated to various levels of Maslow's hierarchy, the wants and the needs is a very nebulous space. There are a lot of things which in a lens can be seen as a want, actually are primal to existence and therefore become a need.
So, as a follow-up question, what is Tanishq's marketing philosophy if you were to encapsulate it for us?
I think as a brand, we've always believed that our muse is the woman, the modern day woman, and she has evolving in such a metamorphic rate. So we as a brand believe that we are her confidant, we are her partner in the journey. We are in some ways also the catalyst who makes or sort of provokes certain conversation that open more conversation in her midst. When we did remarriage many years ago, it was so ahead of its time, but it was a conversation we began because there was certain part of the society that was already getting into those conversations. So we as a brand, we believe that every woman can spark a new narrative, and our role as a brand in her midst is about making sure that narrative is given a platform to be seen by more people. At a tangible level, our strategy has always been to fuel the aspiration of women, and we call it the AIR model, which is we fuel the aspiration of women, we build a certain fraternal feeling for a lot of people to identify with the brand, and we root ourselves in very much of cultural relevance for the woman. And that's how the whole marketing strategy sits for us today.
Ranjani, you pride yourself on being able to understand the new and evolving Indian woman. And the Indian woman, as we all know, is not one woman. It's hundreds of thousands of different women. How are you so sure that you're not talking up or down to women, that you're talking exactly in the language and the idiom of that woman?
I think a very interesting question and a very good question because while we pride ourselves, we also humble ourselves with the fact that she is not monodimensional.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just many women, it's also a single woman has many facets to her that we speak to. So she might be wanting to wear something so culturally rooted like a chola for a wedding, or she might want to wear rhythms of rain at a dinner party that she goes to. So jewelry, like they say beautifully, is a biography of a woman's life. And every time she goes through different life stages, the repertoire she holds also changes because she's evolving as a person. So what you say is a task for us is also equally a challenge for us, that how do you constantly stay connected with this woman and the many dimensions of herself that she wants to explore. So one of the core philosophies in our team is that she believes that she's a masterpiece in the making, and not a masterpiece with a unidimensional outlook. She's not a monolith. She's not a single story. She's got many chapters to her story. So there's a lot of constancy to identify women, both psychographically and also geographically. both from mind state perspective, also from a need state perspective. And therefore, we have a grid that sort of makes sure that whenever she walks through a Tanishq store and the multitude of occasions that she can think of where she wants to express herself in a certain way, there is a piece of jewelry that complements her beautifully. There's a piece of memory that she takes back, symbolized in the jewelry. Say, like, for example, wedding jewelry. There is so much of culture sitting in wedding jewelry, and there are so many different kinds of brides. One end, you can say there is a minimalist brides to a maximal bride.
Yeah.
Equally, there are different kinds of way the brides express themselves, between Saat Feras to Sangeet to Mehendi to
the after
reception
party, yeah.
to
It's
the
like-
after party
yeah.
to the cocktails after that. So there is so much in this place is so replete with insights that we are constantly asking ourselves, have we understood her completely? And we make these humble attempts with the stories that we say and with the products that we're making, that we are able to build an irrational desire. She's wearing a piece of jewelry which is not so many grams at so many price, but a certain has a certain artisanal craft value to it. She understands that craft. She understands what goes in making it, so that she feels proud to be an owner of it.
Ranjani, one of the key advertising strategies of Tanishq seems to be around this idea of conversation, and you've brought it up a few times in this interview. Have you ever read it wrong, the conversation? Have you ever got it wrong?
There is always, in any brand's journey, there will always be hits and misses, and we've had fair amount of conversations and fair amount of times when we've got it 100% right, and fair amount of time we have got it right, but it has potentially post gotten misconstrued as well. So, but fundamentally, what we have believed is that we are a category that sits on happiness. People are happy, so they go buy jewelry. We are a category that sits on generational paradigms. So we are something that has almost an infinite shelf life. So with all this as in the space of the consumer's life, where a piece of jewelry might be held for many years and it could encapsulate many moments of happiness, how do we create meaningful conversations that go beyond and our slice of life, our back to the progressive woman, and what are the sort of mandates she's trying to push in her world? What are some of the changes she's trying to build in her environment that makes the place a better place, not just for her, but other women who will join the fraternity with time? So back to your question, I think conversation is core to, Tanishq. Conversation is core to our women. Women like to speak and women like to be spoken to. And that's been a journey of learning for us. Sometimes we've got it right. Sometimes it has sort of also taught
Posed a
us
few
more.
challenges, shall we
taught
say.
us more than we had anticipated.
All right, let's talk about your ad films. Your ad films have excellent casting, excellent acting, great production values, but they're long, nuanced pieces of dialogue. This is not easy for everybody to understand. Right? It's like watching a mini film and getting involved in the plot line. Why this approach to advertising?
I feel the category sanctions gives us the sanction to do that, because jewelry is such a complex and a category that has so replete with emotions that it is not like, and I've been in FMCG and I have schooled in FMCG. FMCG's made me the kind of marketeer I am. But FMCG has a lot more short form formats of communication that it lends itself to. Lifestyle allows you to explore life, explore nuances of emotions that are sort of related to your category. So for us, we've always believed that there is a story to say it. There is no, as someone said, there is no long copy. There's good copy, a bad copy. So I don't think the duration of a film has ever impacted the interaction that we've had
You
in
don't buy
engagement.
this millennial theory that we live in shrinking attention spans and people want 10-second content and 20-second content?
They might want, and those content have a different meaning or a different objective. Like if I am doing reels on my product, I can keep it short and script it in a way that it builds desire. But when I'm telling a story of a woman's life, I cannot shortchange it. There is no shorthand to it.
Okay.
And I don't think the hours that we spend with friends over coffee have changed. So people love conversations.
Okay.
The device is another ball game altogether that makes people shorthand lives in many ways.
Other than the obvious metrics, how do you measure the success or failure of a campaign? What personal metrics do you use?
For us, it's important that the brand gets built. The campaign is a means to a journey of making the woman feel more emotionally connected with us, a journey of the woman seeing us as a partner in her journey. So every campaign we firmly believe has to move our preference scores. Every campaign in markets where we are still building ourselves has to move our consideration scores. Every campaign has to engage with people at a certain rate, and the quantum and the quality of conversations that it generates socially certainly is something that we look at another measure to assess the success of our campaign.
What about marketers' gut feel? What if you look at this and say, I get the data, but I think this is right or wrong? Do you ever find yourself exercising that kind of veto?
Totally, totally. I mean, there are campaigns where we believe that we've started a conversation, it is brewing in the consumer's mind, and we have to stay the course for it to reach the tipping point. And that's where I think our collective gut comes together of the years of experience that one has to say, I know this is right. Maybe we've not given its due exposure. Like you said, our stories are also onions, they have, like
Some
the
of
jewelry
these things
piece.
take time. It may not be obvious.
There are pieces of work that have been done on Tanishq, and I kid you not, we realize nuances that come out, and that, I mean, we as marketeers, but even consumers sort of give you some nuances that you as a marketer would be very surprised to pick up. Like, I'll give you an example of a campaign we did for the South. It's called, Pudumai Pen. And we had a series of how, and Pudumai Pen is all about the modern Indian woman. And we had series of real paradoxes where women are seen as custodians of culture, but also the harbingers of modern thought. And the way Madurai reacted to it was very different from the way Chennai reacted to it. Chennai sort of reacted to it very much in what we had anticipated. But Madurai was
Contrary
such
to
a...
popular belief, we are all not Madrasis. There is lots of nuance within Tamil Nadu, and Madras reacts, Chennai reacts differently.
It's never south of the Vindhyas
That's
being
correct.
one big factory.
In the interest of full disclosure, Ranjani, I'm an ex-Titanian myself. I worked in Titan in the 90s.
I can see the passion in your voice.
And I've been wearing Titan ever since. I've never worn a non-Titan watch, except for HMT when it shut down. As a mark of respect, I wore an HMT watch. But that aside, my question is this. You have Tata, the parent brand. You have Titan, the sub-brand. You have Tanishq, the sub-brand. And then you have Mia, Alekia, Zoya, Riva, and a host of brands. Aren't you scared or worried about confusing your customers about what the actual brand is?
Not really, because Alekia, for starters, let me deconstruct what you're saying. Alekia, for starters, was a collection. And we always bring out these collections as an ode to certain design, a craft which is long gone, or a craft which is sort of has still sustained the annals of history. Tata is a brand we borrow from. Tata is a brand that gives a lot of people the assurance, the sort of guarantee that when they come in and buy from Tanishq, they are going to be given the product which is of high purity. There's transparency in transaction. There is a sort of absolute certainty that the product will not let them down. Titan is a huge source of, again, where we borrow from in terms of our own identity. So every partner in our journey has a role in making us who we are. Now, coming down to the brands of Mia, Zoya and Tanishq, I think each of these brands have a job to be done. Like, psychographically, these brands talk to very different women. And even demographically, between Mia and Tanishq, there is a Gen Z versus women who sort of sit across the spectrum that Tanishq talks to, which is millennial and above. So each brand has a role to play. And each brand sits under the canopy of trust from Tata's. Each brand has a legacy to build, and it has collectively told us that the consumer is finding what she's liking. Sometimes at a Zoya, sometimes at a Tanishq, sometimes at a Mia.
Okay. Have you managed to convince men to wear jewelry?
Actually, culturally, men have always worn jewelry. And there is a thought process that when industrialization started and men had to go to the factories to work, that's when the change of guard happened, that you had to wear something which is more functional, and that sort of got them away from jewelry. But we have a fair amount of business that comes from men. We have a sub-brand which is called Avir, which speaks to the more equivalent of the modern classical, so contemporary classic outlook to men's jewelry, and that collection itself also does very well. So,
and what are the challenges in getting? I wear no jewelry, as you can see, except for a watch. If you can consider that jewelry, what are the challenges in getting men to wear more jewelry?
It comes from making them understand a certain look. So, like, we see our trends tell us as jewelry is coming back to the man's world in a big way. You see weddings where the bridegrooms are adorned in very ornate jewelry.
Mhm.
I see a lot of young boys in my team who are wearing very fashion forward jewelry that helps them accessorize their persona.
Mhm.
So I think it's understanding, like any other category, men are no different. You have to understand what are they looking to express themselves as, who are they wanting to express themselves as, and does jewelry have a role to play to accentuate that expression?
Changing track, I'm going to ask you about your partnerships, like the one with RCB or the one with Disney Hotstar. How much resources and attention do you put on these partnerships?
Partnerships are a good way for us to work together with people who come with a certain domain knowledge.
Mhm.
I can talk about the Hotstar piece because that is something that is very dear to me in terms of our journey as a wedding jeweler, and we are just building ourselves in that category because wedding has such deep relationships that people have with generational jewelers, that as a young brand it's important for us to give them a reason to opt to us. To answer your question, whenever there's a complementary virtue that sort of gives us an access to a larger set of customers or a larger ability to tell stories, like Hotstar was, I need to tell a story in 35 minutes.
Mhm.
It is not a 35 seconds. It's not a 1.5 minute. How do I build depth of my jewelry knowledge, expertise of my ability to style a bride of today, give the expanse of the kind of jewelry that we have for anyone who's looking to get married? So that needed a long form, and a long form like Hotstar, no other. So to answer your long question, we are open to partnerships. We work with where there are complementary virtues that we can put together, allow us formats that we as a brand might not be able to have full access to, and we're open to
I
more of
ask because
those.
I imagine these are not cheap partnerships. These are expensive investments that you make, whether it's the women's team or it's RCB. How would you measure the success or failure of a content partnership like that?
I think RCB was done by Mia, and I'm sure they have their metrics as well. We operate as business units. Hotstar specifically for us is all about saying that if we are wanting to build consideration and preference scores among women, does and among young brides and amongst families of young brides, how does exposure to content like this really help people move mind measures when it comes to a brand? So, are we able to reset the brand in their mind as a brand they would want to wear at their weddings, or as a brand that they would want their daughters to wear?
Mhm.
So for us, it's all about am I able to create a paradigm shift in the consumer's mind by exposing them to a storytelling format that allows our jewelry to be heroed as much as the bride to be heroined.
Okay. And Ranjani, what's it going to take to replicate the Tanishq success story in global markets?
I think there is a lot of brand love, and it is about staying the course like we built it in India. I'm sure we can build the same in international markets, because we do get a lot of international orders on our website. So there is a lot of Indian diaspora who looks up to us, looks out for us, comes back to shop with us during the NRI season. So there is a lot of evidence to say that the brand has equity in those markets.
And
So
going by the
typically,
success of Titan in global markets, I'm sure you're headed for great success in
fingers
global
crossed.
markets as well. Let's talk about working with agencies. I have only two more questions for you. There's two approaches. One, you work with multiple agencies for different campaigns, or you concentrate all your work in one agency and expect them to service all your advertising needs. You work with the multiple agency model. What are the pros and cons of this decision?
We're moving from an era of generalist to specialist.
Mhm.
I see that in my team, where I have specialists who are managing digital, and specialists who are managing, traditional media, specialists who are managing certain set of content vehicles versus certain other sets of content vehicles, which are more traditional in their pursuits. So, to be able to give the customer a fuller experience, I think it's very critical to understand these experts outside of our team as well and partner with many. The challenge becomes how the brand entity and the brand identity gets preserved when we do this. And that's the custodianship that the brand team holds. That if I have a campaign which is being worked across by 5 different partners, because they come to the table with their expertise in their own space, whether it's digital, whether it is sort of media, whether it is about traditional storytelling, whether it is about PR, the brand team needs to say that these are the codes of the brand. And in a sense, that the integrity of the brand has to be preserved. So this model has worked well for us because each of our partners is very is very mature enough to understand the brand. Each of our partners gets what we want to do, and they are pros in their own field. So it's about the best of two worlds.
Okay.
Many worlds, rather.
I mentioned earlier that Tanishq films have fantastic casting. How much of this casting do you personally oversee, Ranjani? Do you go to casting calls and review audition tapes and all of that?
We do. We, at the PPM, as a group between my brand manager and my marketing manager, we sit down and we go through the calls. But essentially, I have a fabulous team.
Okay.
And it's a team which is empowered to take calls. The primary responsibility of getting the output is collective.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an empowered approach. Sometimes we've asked the director, who do you think you can work best with? Who do you think you can bring out the best in? And we go with those calls. So it depends on shoot to shoot, story to story. Sometimes choices are very clear, and sometimes choices are such that you go with the creative person's confidence to be able to bring out the best in a person.
Okay, Ranjani, final question for you. What are your favorite pieces of jewelry?
Very difficult question. As I said, women are spoiled for choice and there is no one. The larger response that I would give is that they construct their looks depending on where they're going.
Mm-hmm.
And women today have a plethora of social, professional engagements that they are in. And they are very consciously curating themselves for each of these occasions. And they might have favorite pieces per occasion, per sort of need state. I'm so sorry, I didn't really answer your question, but it is a very difficult question to answer.
I can see your need state at work right now. I see you're wearing a minimal amount of jewelry right now.
Absolutely.
And that's the need state and the emotional state at work, I'm guessing. With that, Ranjani Krishnaswamy, thank you for talking to us at Melt.
Thank you so much. Take care.
And with that, it's a wrap on this episode. You can follow Melt on social media. The handle is Ready to Melt, or simply log on to readytomelt.com. If you'd like to follow me, it's @Suvenk on Twitter. Till next week, goodbye and thanks for watching.